there was the whole Egyptian angle.
Yeah.
It was pretty interesting. Although I'm not quite sure where they were going with that.
I don't think they were quite sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Slims Presents Podcast, episode number 3. I'm your host, Chris Oldacre. Donnell is absent right now. He'll be back at some point. For now, it's just an empty chair. And I'm here with our guest today, the guys of the Oakland-based black metal noise band Sutekh Hexen. And I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, starting at this side with...
Andy Way, vocals, noise, etc.
Ryan Jenks, noise, guitar, etc.
Everybody's an etc.
Kevin Ganyuen, guitar, etc.
Josh Churchill, baritone guitar, electronics, bit recordings.
Now, you guys went through a little bit of a lineup change. I know Ryan and Josh and Andy as well. Were you guys all, did you come into the band at the same time?
No,
Josh and I did.
You
yeah,
guys
those
came.
two. But I joined with Kevin and a former bandmate, like maybe 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
But
So-
yeah, we've gone through a few lineup changes.
So what was the band when you guys first started? What was the general goal of the band and what you were hoping to capture?
Yeah, initially when we first started, it was just Scott and I. It was a duo, and just wanted to write songs and record songs that we ourselves wanted to hear. You know. So where it's at now, in terms of like lineup and all, it's pretty interesting.
Well, there's a little bit of controversy every time I go and look you guys up online or see a blog post about you, or we did a video with you guys to sort of promote your show at the Music Hall back in January, February, something
September.
like. Was it?
Oh, sorry, January.
Oh yeah. January. I think it was January. They opened up for Wreckmeister Harmonies and Corrections House at the Music Hall, and we did a promo video, uploaded it to YouTube. I thought it was a cool video. The first fucking comment is somebody running off at the mouth about Sutekh Hexen are plagiarizers and everything is just bullshit and you guys are hacks and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I understand that a lot of this comes from the fact that like one of the original members decided to leave the band. Is that right?
Yeah, he exercised his free will and he left. And that's it. It's that simple. We won't get too into it, but you know, he had other obligations and those obligations are respected. And it is what it is.
So was it just a kind of thing where you guys had worked on stuff together that once he left, it's like, well, we're not going to fucking scrap all this work we did, like, and he was not cool with that, or what?
We had some things to fulfill for some people, and you know, to just say, oh, deal's off, you know.
Right.
That's not, especially with records. So much, thousands of dollars are put into pressing a record, and you just say, we changed our mind, you know. you can't really do that sometimes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, regarding that's it. But as far as you know, all the mudslinging, I think a lot of it has to do with the former label, you know.
Oh yeah.
And how he felt when we realized that, you know, we're being mistreated.
Oh.
But, you know, who cares? You know?
Yeah, I mean, shit happens.
It's
you
the
know?
internet.
Yeah.
How serious do you want to take things?
Well, that's a question. Do you guys take it seriously? Does it bum you out every time, like, you guys...
I try not to.
No,
I mean...
It's immature.
There's a point where, yeah, it affects you a little bit, but then you're like, all right, actually, this is one guy.
Yeah.
It's like one or two guys, and
I don't
versus
notice it actually.
Oh, yeah?
I've never.
I
Never
barely,
seen any.
it's usually someone else will bring it to my attention,
Right.
because I don't pay attention to like all these like chat boards and like look at comments on things really ever.
Yeah. You
So-
can't look at the comments.
I wasn't aware of it until somewhat recently. People usually will say, "Oh yeah, did you see this?" It's like, no.
Frankly, I don't care. Like, it's not music that we're making for everybody to like.
That's
And
true.
it's like, you're either going to like it or you're not. It's not, we're not trying to make popular music here. If some people are swayed by random YouTube comments, fine. If that's how you want to live your life, and where some random YouTube comment is going to like dictate what you think about people, and like, then I don't necessarily need you as listening to my music anyways. So
My favorite one so far was, "You guys need to write songs with more structure."
Really?
It's like somebody, I think it was, I forgot where it was, but somebody was telling us how to write songs.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
you're right.
Well, I mean, I will admit, you guys' choruses are a little bit cheesy. You might want to work on that. But no. That's actually pretty funny. If you've heard Sutekh Hexen's music, it's very atmospheric, very ambient, and really just sort of like a cascading wall of textures. So to complain about the structure of an ambient song is one, pretty ignorant. But do you guys, speaking of the style of music, you guys get labeled a lot as black metal or noise or ambient, but you guys don't really fall into any of those categories. Do you categorize yourself, or is there something you're trying to accomplish that you have a vision in your head, like, this is what I am reaching for, even if it doesn't have a genre name?
I think those genres mentioned are kind of, they're just what they
Influences.
are. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
influences, and it's a good starting point. But ultimately, the stuff that we put out is the stuff that we just want to hear, without restriction.
It's kind of nice to not be categorized.
Yeah.
I mean, if those are, standpoints to look from,
Right.
those are good pinnacles, but I don't know. I think it'd be nice if it continues not to be able to be categorized. Stuck in between genres.
When you guys got started, and when you are writing new music, a lot of it seems to be based on creating sounds out of something that maybe isn't a traditional instrument, or taking just ambient sounds or noise and creating a song structure out of these elements in a somewhat organic, although electronically created manner. And this to me sort of evokes like a DIY mentality, where you're taking pretty much anything that you can get your hands on and finding a way to turn it into something musical or evocative in some kind of way. How did you develop that mindset? Because it seems to be recurring throughout a lot of the things that you guys do. Terminal is a space that you guys practice in. You put on shows there, and it's sort of a DIY venue. Where did this mentality come from, and how do you think it influences the music that you make? Sorry, that was a really long, winding question, but take from it what you will.
Well, I think all of us outside of this band are all experimental or noise artists already. So that kind of definitely informs songwriting style and using just our general approach.
It's just using whatever's available, you know, seeing things from different angles, playing. I mean, some of the people I know, they play prepared guitars. You know, a
Yeah.
guitar is known as just, you know, an instrument, for the most part, an instrument that you strum. But there's so many other ways you can affect it. I mean, look at Sonic Youth, just
Yeah.
as a more well-known example.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just having a different approach. But as far as like field recordings, everyday objects, you know, that air conditioning unit over there
Yeah.
is making
Yeah.
sound. I mean, that could be musical or anything. You know, it's just being aware of your surroundings and seeing where it fits into, you know, a song.
And that seems to be kind of like a theme of the band. We talked at our previous video shoot. We sat and talked for quite some time about a whole range of shit. But one of the things that we talked about was sort of the recurring themes that you guys have pulled out of your music, not necessarily intending to tackle certain themes, but after time you sort of started to realize that, you know, the songwriting process sort of always seemed to be based around this idea of birth and death and decay and then rebirth and the cycle of the universe, essentially. So does that is that a conscious effort that you guys are really focusing on now that you've identified it?
I don't know if that's conscious. It might come into it a bit, like thinking about it, but honestly, I don't. I think that, you know, we just go in and do it. You know, it's just part of who we are and our makeup and our just our general approach.
Are there some things that you guys are thinking about when you're writing music? Do you try and get into a certain headspace, or how does the process sort of take shape? Are you all writing stuff and bringing it, or is it one person primarily doing the songwriting?
Everybody here contributes to the process, and, you know, when it comes to, you know, whether it's the drums, the guitars, the noise, it's whoever has something first, and you lay that down, and there's a lot of file swapping. You know, I mean, not all of it you can just do on the spot, like, oh, hey, check this out.
Right. So do you take
rehearsing and
Yeah.
coming up with? I guess before Josh and I joined, there was a lot more
It's true.
bouncing back and forth of ideas and riffs and whatnot. But seems like with this lineup, it's more getting together and
Yeah, it's a little more
coming up
visceral.
coming up with something that, you know, putting sounds together or whatever and seeing what works and building a song out of that.
Which is a lot more helpful, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fairly organic in terms of how the things are coming together.
So you guys are like going down a jam band route now?
Absolutely. That's pretty much what we're trying to tell you.
Working on that structure.
Yeah.
Thanks, commenter.
Wait for our next image change. Coming.
So circling back to Terminal a little bit, what inspired, it's primarily your project, Ryan?
Mm-hmm.
What inspired you to do that?
I lived in San Diego for 10 years through the 90s, and I was in a bunch of experimental bands then, and I used to book shows and participated in, you know, playing shows, and I mean, there's a long history of musicians that have come out of San Diego, but it's not really like the environment for It's like very.
White.
And there's like a there's this dichotomy between like the whole like Republican military complex
Yeah.
and then there was a extreme counterculture at the same time. So
Hmm.
there's a pretty interesting like hardcore movement and like Boyd Rice was from there and Diamond de Glace and all these people, but doing experimental music down there isn't really like that fruitful.
Really?
If you want people to appreciate what you're doing or show up or anything. So
Right.
when I moved up here around 99 2000 and I moved into this house with this guy, and he was already running it as a space that they did occasional shows. And it was when it was called Tomaine Temple, and then we kind of had a falling out, as it were, and so he left, and I took it over full time after that, and started doing shows much more often, and kind of shifted more towards experimental stuff. But even up here, there wasn't really that much experimental music happening, especially not in venues or anything like that. So, but there was a thriving warehouse scene. So, I guess I just started asking people to do experimental sets, and it just started taking off.
So do you, are these mostly people that you're familiar with, or do people send you demos, or how does the booking process go?
Kind of everything. Like, people will contact me on, via email from like some other person who's played, or they heard about the place, or, back in like the early 2000s, I'd get like phone calls randomly from people, and because I had a lot more actual bands, like death rock bands, and kind of like electronic bands, or it was kind of like a more of a mix. I still have metal bands and whatnot play, but over the years it kind of focused more on experimental and noise and industrial and stuff. So it just kind of like built over the years, and people would just get in touch, and or friends would say they're coming through town whenever, and just set something up.
So since we're kind of talking about this DIY mentality where, if something doesn't exist, if you think something should exist, you just fucking do it. Who else is going to do it? Like, what was your first moment? And I guess, anybody who wants to answer this can. What was the first time that you realized that this was an option for you? How did you get into, like, a lot of people get in through experimental music, which I'm sure some of you did, and realizing, hey, I can do this, like, or, a lot of people came through punk rock. Like, what was the first moment where you remember, well, fuck, I can make this happen?
Probably seeing hardcore shows. Like, for me, it was in the late 80s. I used to see punk bands and experimental bands for that time, like in old armories, or boys and girls clubs, or or whatever. Like that was kind of like when it came about, was in the 80s, and people in the hardcore scene would just set up shows wherever, at a house, in a garage, or whatever. And I guess by the time I started playing in the early 90s, just started doing shows at rehearsal spaces or houses or whatever, and just continued from there.
Yeah, the same. house shows or shows in high school gyms back in, the late 90s, early 2000s.
And did you guys have like did you take guitar lessons or have any traditional musical background?
No. Not really.
No, I still don't play an actual instrument.
So what gave you the idea that you could make music?
I actually, so, I'd been in a punk band in the 90s, and, but, that I grew out of that. Actually, what got me into making experimental music is I was moving, and I broke my turntable. It started playing everything at 3 1/3 instead of 33 1/3.
Wow.
So I was just like, at the time I'd already been listening to a bunch of noise, and I just recorded it, and like that, and then of course it righted itself and fixed itself, and it was just like the quest to get that sound again. Which
Right.
of course now I don't care about that, but like it just sounds, it's not that great of a sound to begin with, but that actually was what got the gears turning in my head.
Interesting. I remember when I was young, my grandparents had a printing business. They would print pamphlets and stuff for like the Teamsters down in LA, and before the days of the internet and Kinko's and all that kind of stuff, you actually had to go to a printing press, and so they owned all this machinery. And after school, I would go there and I would sit in the print shop and just hear all these fucking machines going at the same time, overlapping with each other, and like the cutting machine going like, and I would just listen and create the beats in my head. And at that time I was like, a kid. I was like into Michael Jackson and stuff like that. But when I started making music, myself, I found myself like just like making these sounds in my head and being like, not necessarily consciously trying to recreate the sound of the printing press, but it was just so deeply ingrained into my psyche that it just sort of defined everything that I was doing. It's really interesting how something as insignificant as like your turntable gets fucked up can be the thing that opens up this world to you. Nobody else thinks so?
Miracles exist.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what music concrete is based on, is kind of like accidents and errors, and like the beauty in that. And like how, I don't know, things that are decaying can be more beautiful than things that are intentional.
So a lot of you, I'm guessing, outside of music, do other artistic endeavors. What are some of the things that that you do when you're not making music?
Sit around.
Do a lot of freelance graphic design work for friends' bands, labels, record labels, and just help with them, help promote their work,
And do you design your own cover art and stuff like that?
A lot of the time, yeah. But at this point, we know so many people who are talented and just need to get some. We need to really get some of their great work out there. So we're trying to get. We have some surprises.
Oh,
but,
yeah?
But yeah, we'll talk about that a little later. But yeah, I mean, just getting other people involved is a great part of what we do too. People who are equally talented, or even more so in certain fields. And it's just acknowledging that. But yeah, I do that for a living now. Walk my dog, hang out with my lady. Pretty basic.
And so I know you guys have your space in Oakland, but do all of you guys live over there?
Andy and I live in Terminal.
I live in Oakland.
I actually live in San Francisco, not super far from here.
So one of the previous episodes that we had, we were talking a lot about gentrification and the role of artists in society and this sort of cyclical process of artists seeking out spaces where they can sort of like, you know, afford to live and afford to, you know, delve into their craft, and by the sheer act of that, and then people then becoming interested in what they're doing, it jumpstarts this process of gentrification that eventually results in the death of that particular area that was once the hotbed. And I don't know, can we talk about where Terminal is? Is this going to get into anybody into trouble with the Popo or what?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
I mean, it's
in East Oakland, let's just say, in an area that is not very populated. There aren't a lot of people around there. There's not a lot of businesses around there. It's close to a BART station, but still, it's one of the places that hasn't quite been gentrified in Oakland yet. Do you see this process happening in that area? Like, do you see that because the artists are sort of doing all this stuff there, that it's attracting it?
That's been there for a long time, though. Like, I think there's been artists in that neighborhood for a real long time.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it always goes in waves. You know, this is the second time I've lived in this neighborhood, and it goes in waves of like, it's, you know, just the city in general be like more violent or more peaceful, and it changes all the time. But there's nowhere to really. It's not like the Mission, where there's tons of places to hang out, and it just turns into this like, you know, hipster land. It's like there's nowhere to hang out.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's some taquerias.
Yeah.
And
it is pretty desolate.
There's
it's
like
not as central as the Mission.
Yeah. And it's also
you can access it from any direction. More or less.
Yeah.
Like downtown Oakland, obviously that's easy to get to. There, it's just like, there's not. It's kind of tucked away.
And over the last 15 years, I've seen more kind of like artistic types move into the neighborhood, and more girls, which is nice. But it still doesn't feel like it's even close to really like taking off and being, you know, becoming like a mecca of, you know, artists or whatever. I mean, there's a lot more kind of like Burning Man types that I see going to the warehouses that are a little bit farther down from us. But that's kind of it.
There's also no galleries or anything down there to like.
Well, except for like the like in-house kind of like galleries.
People have, you know, but there's no like actual galleries to like draw attention.
There was a cafe that opened up for about 6 months or something.
Oh yeah. And how'd that turn out?
It was nice for a little while. It was about 2 blocks from our house, and didn't
it's
last,
like, you know,
though.
I think they try, but it's just that neighborhood is. There's, you know, the city's always trying to like gentrify everything.
Yeah.
But, like there's just certain areas where it's just not gonna hold. It's just, or at least I hope not.
So you can't really see it ever becoming totally gentrified?
Well, in the late 90s, there was all this talk about it becoming the next Mission, and a bunch of bars came in and then just went under. So, and then I just keep seeing places that seem promising come in, and unless it's like kind of like aligned with what is already established there, it doesn't seem like it really works out. I mean, maybe in a decade or 2 or 3 or something, but I don't know. They're trying to it seems like the city's trying to push for the Coliseum to become something, but
Yeah,
That's going to be a rough one too.
that is a tough sell.
I just don't really see like what that something
I think
is.
it's like West Oakland makes sense that it would
Yeah.
creep into that because it's so close to downtown and what's going on there. But yeah, I don't know.
They got a long ways to go.
A
as well.
long ways to go.
Well, do you feel like you're influenced by your environment in the music that you create? Do you think that it is being inspired by the stuff that you see every day or the environment that you're in that part of Oakland?
Yeah, it must rub off.
I mean, we're right by the tracks, so we hear trains just like barreling through all the time.
Yeah, we have the BART in front of us.
Yeah,
A couple thoroughfares.
sandwiched by like so just
Train
constant
tracks.
roaring all the time. So I
880.
guess that makes
Yeah,
makes
that's
sense.
true.
It's hard not to be influenced by your surroundings, not in a positive way or in a negative way, whatever. But yeah, no matter where you are, if you're a creative mind, it's going to seep into the psyche.
Just put it this way: we're not making any woodland music anytime soon.
Yeah.
Nothing against
Not
that.
yet.
Our
I'm just
neo
saying.
folk album is
Yeah. The neo folk jam
slated
band
for
album.
whenever the area gentrifies.
Yeah. They'll start doing a
They did just
bluegrass
put some,
honky tonk.
some trees in the neighborhood. which
And,
is-
and
Oh,
a
that's
couple
nice.
of them were stolen
Yeah,
immediately.
Stolen trees.
yeah, they
stolen
were
them.
just like ripped straight out of the ground and taken somewhere.
It's kind of like
Wow.
that is just how exactly that neighborhood.
Huh.
That just like is everything you need to
Yeah,
know right there.
I wasn't surprised.
Where do you fence stolen trees? Out of curiosity. I mean, I live in East Oakland, but I live a little bit closer to the hills, and we have a lot of people that come from some of the less affluent parts of Oakland to rob people in my neighborhood and the surrounding areas. So do you notice like a lot of crime in your area, or is it sort of
Yeah.
like
Well, we were living right next door to an abandoned house that had like several, at
pulled,
least
like,
one or
20
two hookers at least living in there.
Pulled like 20 people out of there.
And yeah,
Jesus.
it was a meth den. It was a nightmare.
And they just had like completely like sunk their claws into the place. Like
right?
they had decorated, like they'd like be smoking speed on the porch and like you leave the door wide open and
Yeah.
Yeah.
they had like Christmas lights in there and when they were finally pulled out, they put up a sign like illegal eviction or something like that. It's like, wow. I
So
mean,
yeah, we do see a little bit of that. Yeah, the occasional gunshot. Yeah, the usual.
Well,
yeah, we had a gun pulled on us
oh
in
yeah.
front of that
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
I've had a gun pulled on me, not too far. Well, up Fruitvale a bit, but one of the reasons I moved away and then eventually I came back. But that was not fun. But it's a fact of life in
Yeah.
Oakland. You gotta get used to it in a certain respect. You have to be aware of your surroundings, and you gotta be aware that like, some shit can go down at any moment. And when you live in a place like San Francisco, you can get this false sense of security, I guess, that everything is hunky-dory and it's very safe and you can walk around without really thinking about what you're doing, and you can be
Yeah.
drunk. But I mean, I don't like to live like that. So to me, like the sort of reality of, fuck, I better not be like walking with giant headphones on right now in the middle of the night. Like, I need to be aware of what's happening around me and be present in the moment. I shouldn't be walking around looking at my phone the whole time.
Keeps you sharp.
It does keep me sharp. But I just wonder, like, for a lot of black metal bands, and I'm just gonna, use this genre as an example, are influenced by the darker aspects of society, and making commentary on the uglier side of human nature and things that other people like to sort of push under the rug. So I wonder what about the environment and the reality of living in Oakland is interesting to you guys, because I mean, when I listen to your music, I definitely, when I listen to Burzum or some other like Norwegian black metal, I definitely like see snow, I see like trees in fog, I see like blizzards, and I see like people in robes like going through this fucking, it evokes the environment. And when I listen to your guys' music, I definitely hear it's a lot more urban sounding to me. It's a lot more rooted in, these sort of calm moments that are then interrupted by noise. And to me that, maybe it's just because I live in Oakland, but to me that is very evocative of Oakland. So what about the city is the most interesting to you?
I think there's just a thriving scene there of everything, every type of music that you could want. And I don't know, there's a different attitude there. It's just it's like a little bit more like
Real.
Yeah, real. Like
Yeah.
people are I mean, not to say everyone's this way, but like, there's like a little less fakeness, a little bit more reality in everybody there than like say San Francisco or wherever else.
But it's not to say that bad stuff doesn't happen here.
Oh, for sure.
People,
Yeah.
You'll be walking down Mission, you'll get your face kicked in. I mean,
Yeah.
you hear about negative stuff all the time, but what you were saying, like what you said, you've had I think everybody here has had a gun pulled on them.
Yeah.
And I think it keeps you rooted in reality and how ugly the human condition really is, desperation, and how beautiful it could be. Because, where else can you go get a fancy sandwich and then turn in the corner and watch a guy shooting up and then
Yeah.
have another guy like pull a gun on you. It's very, very real.
But not to say that Oakland's all like
No.
that.
No,
It's not.
no.
There's a lot
It's
of
not.
there's a lot of like beautiful things about the city too.
It's a
There's-
Yeah,
great
for
place.
sure.
I definitely get kind of tired of being in the Bay Area, and
Oh,
then
yeah?
I'll go on tour, and I always am really happy to come back.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if like I'll go on a trip and realize, while I'm gone, like what I like about the Bay Area. So
It's just everything. You have access to anything you could want to get into, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's right.
Like, you can get as urban as you want, and you can get as far away from people as you want, all within the same city, all within the city limits.
and go from the beach to the mountains in
Yeah,
like
the lands.
Yeah.
no time.
Are all of you from California originally?
Yes.
Yeah.
Even Josh?
Yes.
Yes.
He's actually originally from the East Bay.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Alameda. He's that
Alameda's
one guy.
awesome as well.
Yes.
Born in Oakland.
Alameda's like a weird, like, kind of twilight zone
It's
of
like
the
a
Bay
lost,
Area.
It's like
lost
a
town.
weird,
It's like
like,
Smallville.
belongs
Yeah.
Time bubble. It was just like the 50s still
Yeah.
over there.
It feels
I think
like
it's
that.
where that plane. maybe went.
We don't know what the
Let's,
plan
let's
was.
not talk about that. I'm not supposed to talk about
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah, Alameda's like, my friend said it pretty well. It's where rockabillys go to die.
Yeah.
It's,
but now. That
Now-
wasn't
now
true.
it
I
is,
mean,
yeah.
there wasn't even a
I just-
place
I
for
just
that
wish
to
they would
happen
hurry
before.
well, it's this weird,
You
like,
can edit that part out, right?
pristine and like it's a very beautiful city. It looks like the Midwest, but it's all just like guys with tattoos and pompadours like fixing cars in the front of their house.
That's like the last 10 years.
Oh,
though.
yeah?
That didn't exist when.
What was it like? Was it rough and tumble when you were born in
Not
Alameda?
rough and tumble, but definitely more small town, like nothing happened
Right.
there. Tumbleweed kind of town.
It's interesting to have that so close to Oakland, and not just so close to Oakland, but so close to like the parts of Oakland that are, not as desirable as others.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're like
it's-
3 blocks from Alameda or something.
Yeah. The stuff that goes on in our neighborhood does not.
Doesn't
does
happen
not
in
cross
Alameda.
the bridge.
It's very interesting. Like,
But they know. I mean, they look at us like, those guys are from Oakland.
Yeah.
well, yeah, I'd say like every like 5th time that I go to Alameda, there's a DUI checkpoint on the like way out of Alameda.
Yeah.
So like they know there's like 2 or 3 ways out, and they're just
Yeah.
gonna bottleneck you there. But to me, it's very interesting that you can have this environment that is like very, very, by all accounts, peaceful and quiet and very middle America, right next to what the general public considers to be one of the most violent cities in the U.S., which I think is not, maybe not a really true statement, but it is an interesting thing that how come it's like this here, and then, like 100 feet of water away,
Yeah.
it's Wild
weird.
West.
It's a tropical island. It's an oasis sitting in the
The
bay.
estuary, like some kind
Yeah.
of like magical convergence of salt and fresh water creates.
Pure evil resides in the waters of the estuary. But are you guys like very politically minded, or is it
No.
not something that you really are interested in?
Not especially. I mean, there's certain things that, of course, I pay attention to, but I go in waves of caring, and then I just get fed up, and I stop caring.
It's too like frustrating to follow for me, anyway.
Yeah.
So I just block it out.
It's like,
Do you think that like this is going to be a little bit abstract, so forgive me, but do you think in a way the disillusionment with the way things are is one of the things that kind of forces you to start to create this own world for yourself
Oh,
that like
totally,
makes
yeah.
sense for you?
that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much fucked up things going on in the world. It's like,
And it's hard to know because what we know is what's presented.
Yeah.
You can go to various sources, especially with the internet, and even then, it's kind of like, well, I'm reading this in this country,
Mm-hmm.
and yet I'm reading this here, and it's hard to say, but it's good to have options, and it's good to be aware of what's going on,
I have this like weird, stoner mentality where like to me everything is connected. So like when I hear
Sure.
about what you were just saying, to me what I hear is it's basically the same thing as taking something like we were talking about a steel drum earlier, like taking what is a very prototypical instrument for a certain type of music and taking it completely out of context and presenting it in a way that it takes on a different meaning and a different emotional impact. In a lot of ways, that is what media is taking things and packaging them for a certain purpose or to accomplish a certain goal or to sell a certain thing and making it work for that reality, which to me ties into what you guys do musically, is taking things that aren't necessarily traditional music and turning it into something that is compelling to listen to. Is this something that you guys are conscious of, is how you are taking things and presenting them to the world and sort of, in the artistic sense, play with that a lot?
I
Sorry
I
for
don't
the
wanna
stoner questions.
speak
but-
for everybody, but I think yes and no. I mean, I think a lot of it is about kind of presenting a different perspective in terms of a musical output. I mean, a lot of it is kind of also about like sensory overload, I would think, like in terms of when we play with like a full wall of fog. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just about sound. It's kind of, I don't know, it's a very encompassing experience. And I think a lot of it is not just about, it's kind of moving away from the idea of like traditional music and approaching people from a different perspective of sound.
Well,
Kind of taking
interests
those
you about
forms. What's that?
that? What interests you about doing that as opposed to, picking up a guitar and strumming, traditional chord structure and writing a chorus and a verse and a bridge and etc.?
Listen, when you go to a show or just walk through everyday reality, it's there in front of you. You take it for what it exactly is. But when you deprive somebody or people of the norm, literally veil it. And sensory deprivation, you can't see something, it's going to heighten your other senses. It kind of forces you to pay attention, whether or not you're aware of it. You will adjust to it, and you'll pick up things that you did not pick up prior to that state. And I think it's kind of weird. I'm not going to go into the media and how it has parallels to that, but
Why not? I mean,
That's a longer
yeah,
answer, but
well, shit, man, we got all the time in the world.
We do actually strum guitars and
that
play
is
chords.
true.
despite
We
what
do.
people believe, yeah.
No, it's true.
But I think
it's
it does
not
go
a-
beyond that. I think it is about a bigger experience. I think
Yeah.
it's more of an experiential thing. Like, I don't know.
Taking
it's-
people out of their element and
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's about discomfort and about like making people, not being a passive audience member, and kind of, seeing their place in the room
Yeah.
or in the environment.
People have also said, I felt like I was the only one in that room, which I think, again, is another. It could be a good thing or a bad thing if you're afraid of being alone, but to just say, oh well, to feel comfortable and say, oh well, I was able to just stand there and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Often when you go to shows, you're just surrounded, by people. It's hard to move. It's pretty undesirable at times, but.
But I mean, I think that also follows with some of the themes that we're working on, like the idea of isolation and kind of consumption and things like that. But
The
Yeah.
human condition, take it, removing you from that equation, and then once it's over, you're back. How does it feel? Pretty miserable.
hopefully,
Well, what to you is so important about taking someone out of their reality? Why is that necessary? I mean, I have my own reasons, but I want to hear what you guys have to say about it.
when I play, I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, but
Yeah.
I usually am kind of creating the environment that I want to be in, so people can join me if they want, but like in a completely immersed room, filled with fog and stroboscopic lights and all that stuff, and all this, chaotic sound and stuff is kind of like for lack of a better term, like a happy place for me. So so like I'm really only performing for myself, and anyone who's out in the audience, like they can join in.
I think it's something we all strive for, is to like be disconnected from reality for a minute. It's just, I mean, that's why we're a culture that's obsessed with media, obsessed with music, movies, TV, art, everything. It's because we're looking for that disconnection from just our everyday plodding,
Yeah.
boring, grinding lives. I think that's the whole reason we do music, or we make music, is because it's that escape from just the stuff we have to think. I don't know, like, it'd be nice to go to this show and I don't have to think about fucking bills for an hour.
Yeah.
So to like do it, to push it to the extremes that we push it, it's just a natural progression to me. And I mean, and that goes for like noise music too. It's just like a natural progression to like extreme of disconnecting,
Drowning out.
Or
Yeah.
reconnecting.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, you can disconnect from reality, but it doesn't mean you're disconnecting from yourself and
True.
like, what's
Yeah.
going on.
But I think that's some of the most important, or like most interesting parts about like a show or like a performance experience is the people that aren't coming in there for that experience and like pulling them in, like making it that much more like encompassing or that much more like immersive, and kind of changing their minds about it, not giving them a choice and bringing them into the fold of everything that's happening. I mean, I think that's kind of what we're doing too, is creating this overarching experience that goes beyond just music. So
Now, you mentioned like escaping reality in a sense, and something that is interesting to me is how, in a way, our reality is defined by media, and how media is sort of seen as an escape from reality, but it is the thing that defines reality.
Mm-hmm.
And by sort of forcing people to acknowledge things other than this like sort of mainstream construct of what, you know, this is what music is, and this is what a movie is, and a TV show, and this is what radio is, and all these very defined things, and saying, well, okay, but this is music too, and it doesn't have to have this preordained verse, chorus, verse structure, and it doesn't have to, always have a melody or a harmony or, these traditional things. Is, in a way, you're sort of taking someone out of the false construct of reality and forcing them back into acknowledging the real world, in a way.
Forced introspection.
Well, yeah, I
maybe?
mean,
I don't know.
to me, I think that's an important thing. I mean, to me, that's what this podcast is all about, is that, in my opinion, people have become very complacent with the way things are, and that the way you interact with music, the way you value art and things like that, that is, to me, not a healthy thing. It doesn't reward the people that are actually changing the world, that are creating the art, that are out there contributing to culture and society. So to take people out of that mindset and be able to put them in a sort of new version of reality, where you see the artist whose music you enjoy, you get to hear what their perspective is on things, and get to see that, hey, these are real people that are doing this for a reason, and by supporting them, I can, advance their study, so to speak. Like someone would get a grant to do a research project or something like that. I think of artists as in the same way, that their job is to take culture, pick it apart, and internalize it in a way that they be able to pull away certain understandings and certain perspectives, and then show it back to people so that they can then also take part in that, because not everyone has the time to do that, not everyone has the talent to do that, and it's the place of artists in our culture to be able to do that for people and provide them with this alternate take on reality. So the idea of disrupting the established way of doing things and forcing people to accept it and internalize it the way they would any other thing is, helps people grow and helps people expand their understanding of the world. And, I don't know if you guys get this heady about stuff when you're thinking about music, and you're thinking about what ultimately you want to do, what impact you want to have. Is that something that you guys are even thinking about? Like, what print do we want to leave on the world? What do we want to contribute?
I definitely think about it. I mean, it's part of the artistic drive to like want to leave a mark, and not like immortality or like whatever like that, or like fame or anything, but to like express yourself in a way that is like, all right, there it is, that's me.
So we're probably not going to have kids, so hopefully we'll leave a slew of records.
Yeah.
Well, where do you think that drive comes from? Because not everybody has it.
I think maybe it is like a little bit of like a quest for some like immortality in a way, of just being like, you think about like just, you don't want to just die and it didn't make a difference whether or not you're here or not. You were just another cog in the machine. I mean, some people are just not happy with that. So, create.
Yeah, kind of move out of complacency. Have some sort of shadow or a voice. Whatever that is.
Do you guys like remember having this drive, like, when you were young?
Yeah.
Was it something you were born with, or did you gain it over time?
Definitely.
Yeah, I think so.
I grew up in a very musical family, so it was already just part of the atmosphere. It was just like, oh yeah, that's just the way it is. So I remember, from a young age, like, seeing my dad's records and being like, oh yeah, I want to do that at some point in my life. And everyone in my brother and sister, musicians too. I think it was definitely like just part of the atmosphere growing up for me.
Recognizing that we all have the ability to be creative, and especially if you do understand that you're doing more than consuming and being average, then it definitely gives you an extra drive to get out there and bond with like minds, just make stuff happen. I think that's how it has always been. The people that came before us and the people that came before them, you just don't have a choice.
I mean, I don't think it's completely selfless, at least for myself. I mean, it's a release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a way to let out a creative energy in a voice. So
All of the artists that I know, and myself included, the act of creating art and the act of doing what we do, whatever that is, seems to come from an internal drive, like you mentioned. Like, it's not something that you really have control of. It's something that is in there, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. But if you don't acknowledge it, it sort of starts to destroy your life. Like, you can't be right unless you're like letting that out. Mm-hmm. And I know that you guys use a lot of like occult, esoteric symbolism in your music, and you reference ancient religion and all these sort of semi-spiritual things. Do you think that there is something that exists out there that we tune into, or that sort of dictates how, who we might become? Deep questions here. I'll kind of put it into perspective for you. Like, I've talked to a lot of songwriters who, write folk music or whatever it is they write, and visual artists as well, that the best kind of songwriting is when it comes to them, and it seems almost fully formed when it's coming to them. And where that thing came from is like a mystery, but they're the conduit
Right.
through which it's coming through. Do you guys ever feel that that's something that is happening to you?
Definitely.
All the time.
Especially in my solo sets. And that's like the whole goal, in fact, of all my solo sets, is to do that. I intentionally don't practice or come up with a set before I come in, or before I play my solo thing. So because I want to tap into that. It's the entire goal. And if it sounds good, great, but like...
And also that in experimental music, with us and other bands that we do and stuff, we don't necessarily write songs, so a lot
Right.
of it's open to improvisation and, you could say like channeling that kind of like energy. And because we don't write a set necessarily. We might have ideas, but that we can kind of like fall into or whatever, but most of it is just kind of like spontaneous.
It's different for this band, though. Maybe
Yeah.
just talking about like us individually and what we do.
Yeah.
But the band is like very much like we might
Yeah.
get criticism for not being very structured, but they're actually songs.
No, yeah.
Play the same every time. But but yeah, I definitely
Well,
think.
kind of. I mean,
Well,
they're not like rock songs or anything.
Yeah.
Counts.
They're
It's all-
closer
it's
to
all
rock
numerical.
songs than anything I've ever done.
Yeah.
Not me, but
Well, yeah, you actually were in bands.
Bands.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with like more than just yourself, you have to develop a sort of way to communicate with each other and a way to signify, all right, we're moving on to this section now, and okay, we're changing cadence here, whatever.
Yeah, it's a very high form of communication because it's more than just like, it's not just talking. Especially the way what Ryan was saying, if we're just jamming, to develop new stuff, new ideas, there are some moments where it's just like, okay, cool. That spoke to everyone. That's it. Working on that.
Now, talking about things like, the artistic drive that we were talking about, do you believe in things like reincarnation, where like perhaps that is something that, has resided within you from a past?
Another deep question, Chris.
All about deep questions. I did want to call this podcast Deep Thoughts, but it was already
Jack
already
Handy already had
taken
that.
by Jack Handy.
Cosmos, San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty complicated thought, actually. When you think about, if you bring it on a surface level, like where's this bottle going? How many of these bottles are there? And it's just going to be another bottle once it's gone, once it's served its purpose. And how many bottles is it distributing to? I don't know. That's not what I'm saying is the truth, but that's
Right.
just one. It's one perspective. I don't think that's something that should be approached from a singular perspective either. Who knows?
I mean, I think the idea of cycles are definitely like
Yeah.
thematic. I wouldn't put it
Yeah.
too specific. And definitely the ideas of life and death and the interactions between them, but I wouldn't say we have a very strong hold in terms of our opinion like on it. So it's, but yeah, those themes definitely influence the work.
I mean, I asked these like weird sort of like, deep questions because you guys do sort of use a lot of mythology in your music and delve into some of these sort of occult ways of thinking, and a lot of ancient alchemy and stuff is based on these concepts, and I mean, at least I identify a lot of that stuff in the music that you guys make. So I feel like it would be interesting to sort of delve into some of these things a little bit, and it's hard to bring them out in our culture the way it exists today. We were talking about it being defined by media a lot, and we've sort of been in the last 50 years or so, we've been living in like a very practical, scientific, material reality, and I see now a lot of people sort of using art to challenge that in a way and take it to another level where and explore some of these things that maybe aren't provable, aren't you can't verify them with the scientific method, but if every musician that I talk to says, yeah dude, I feel like this shit just exists out there and it I'm plugging into it,
then that proves it in a way.
There's something to that. You can't ignore that, all these people are experiencing the same thing. It's like I don't know if you guys are into psychedelics or anything like that, but it's there are certain psychedelics where a lot of people report seeing or feeling the same things, and it gets you to the level where you have to sort of confront that and say, well, there must be something to this. Not everyone is going to be seeing a snake unless there's something there that's that everyone is tuning into, and it's not just based on your own brain firing off based on your experiences, which is the scientific understanding of what hallucinating is. But acknowledging that there may be these things out there that we are sort of tuning out in the way we're interacting with reality.
Yeah, I mean, I know they are out there. Yeah. Kevin and I have shared
oh yeah
seeing things.
We've had experiences on tour.
And, yeah, I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes and in a sober state, so I know that things exist. That, yeah, maybe for our own sanity's sake, half the time we tune it out, and as we become tired or whatever else, our defenses are down for whatever reason. Which I don't think everyone sees stuff, but
right.
Some people are more sensitive than others.
Yeah.
But no, I fully believe.
Well, what are some of the things that you guys have experienced? Not, you don't have to get too specific, but
we both saw
Iowa City.
Yeah,
in
we
2012.
both saw basically the front of a person, the outline of a person running across the street several times.
It was to clarify, it was like a shadow.
Yeah,
basically.
It was like the front of a shadow of a person. We saw the same thing.
No judging here, by the way. No judging. Not be like, you crazy motherfuckers.
But
I mean,
that was not the first time Andy has seen something similar. It's definitely not the first time.
The first time I remember actually seeing something that got me actually thinking about this and reading more into it was maybe in 98 or 9, maybe it's 2000. I can't remember. I was working at Amoeba Music in Berkeley, and there was there's this homeless man that we would see all the time. He just kind of walking around, no shoes, never said anything to anyone, just walked all around Berkeley and Oakland all day, every day. He was arrested, and he was put into a cell with somebody that they were. I don't even know why they would put him in the cell with this guy, but like, basically his cellmate ended up smashing his brains open, eating his brains, breaking open his chest, and like
Jesus.
decorating the cell with his like entrails. You could look it up. It's
Wow.
it's
Do you know?
3
like,
days.
who is
3
it?
days after. 3 days after I read about this happening, I saw the homeless man who
Wow.
was. I saw him walk right in front of me, and
Wow.
I was just like, what the? And I followed him, and he turned the corner and it was gone.
How can we look this up? What are some things that this story is crazy. I mean,
No, it's nuts. I mean, it was in the papers and
it's not every day that someone,
And in Berkeley.
decorates. Yeah, exactly.
in Berkeley
like,
too. Like it's. I mean, as weird as Berkeley is, it's not known for
yeah,
that kind of weird.
at least not all the time.
Not all the time.
Yeah. Everything in moderation.
That was the first time that actually got me thinking seriously about, like what we are and what happens after. I mean, some people will say, oh, that was just a psychic imprint of him, like walking through. That's something
Right.
you're so used to seeing. But no, I mean, it was clear as day. And it was in such a violent manner that his death, that I'm like, it makes perfect sense that would happen to me. I don't know. That was the first time I'd seen something that wasn't supposed to be there. And many other things, not as like clear and vivid as that, but
Yeah.
so I fully believe that there's something there that we don't see, and then like maybe with the aid of psychedelics or whatever else,
Yeah.
your brain, your defenses are down, and you'll see more of like the reality, more of the the energy flows of
Yeah.
just the universe.
Just alters the frequency, our natural frequency, into closer to theirs.
I'll find that. I'll look that up, and I'll send you a link to the article.
Definitely send me that. That's a crazy story. I mean,
Yeah.
wow. And was this just jail or was this prison?
Yeah, it was jail. It was like
Holy
downtown
shit.
Berkeley jail. Like
Downtown
he was.
Berkeley has a jail.
Well, yeah, like it was the Berkeley Police Department.
Okay.
Wow.
Like he was. Apparently, the other prisoner, the one that ate him, was waiting to be transferred to something more.
Wow.
But they left him in there with him overnight.
That's some serious like Hannibal Lecter shit. Right
Yeah.
there. That's like not some shit you hear about every day.
No.
Wow.
This was. I want to say this was like 98,
Wow.
99. But yeah.
So when you experienced this stuff and you started looking into it, like what were you finding and what was resonating with you? Like what did you arrive at something where you a point where you were able to say, okay, now I sort of get this, or is it still a mystery?
I mean, I think it's one of those things that I'm going to be reading into my entire life. And I get it because I believe it, because I've seen it and I know it's true, but like I don't understand. I don't think it's something we can ever fully understand. Because no one's come back to tell us what happens when after we die.
Yeah.
But I do definitely, I believe it's more than, people say that you release DMT into your brain when you die, and then all these like visions of an afterlife that
Yeah.
people get when they are going to die but make it, or it's just the DMT. I don't know if I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that still doesn't explain why people that do DMT, many people see the same things.
thing.
Yeah.
That doesn't,
Heard.
still doesn't explain that fact.
No.
So,
And it doesn't explain the fact that I saw someone who'd been eaten walk like right in front of me.
Were you already sort of into the darker side of things at that point?
Yeah, I'd had interest. I was, but I think that's what definitely made me more serious about it. It was just like a passing thing. Oh, this is cool, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's cool because it's edgy or whatever. But that actually was a turning point for me, of making me actually think about things and take things more seriously, rather than just, like a costume, basically. Which is a lot true for a lot of people. It's just like a costume,
Right.
to like believe in dark.
Yeah.
But having actually experienced it, and many things since then, was definitely a turning point.
Well, a lot of you read or hear interviews with a lot of the like very occult focused bands, like black metal bands and stuff like that are very into ritual and things like this. Do you guys think of your music as ritual? Are you doing things, specifically to achieve a certain end?
Times.
I think that's an aspect of it, but that's not the entire intent. I mean, it definitely, like, changing the mood of the room.
Yeah.
Using like heavy sonics and making like lighting, and that's ritual in itself.
Right, yeah.
That's the whole purpose of ritual in general, is to change the mood of the room to achieve some sort of mental state. I mean, it's rarely what the ritual is. It's more the mental state that you're trying to achieve. And yeah, I think that definitely plays into what we do. Whether it's intentional or not, it's something that we're aiming for, and in a way it becomes the ritual. But as far as like, do we sit around in robes?
Yeah, did you bring your robes?
That's my bag
No,
over
that's
there.
not the.
It's at the dry cleaners.
But I think that idea of like reaching different consciousness with sound and music it's definitely part of it. But I don't think it's the traditional sense of creating a ritual with that. I mean, I think it has an influence, but it's not one and the same.
I mean, we heard about some of Andy's experiences. What did any of other of you have an experience that sort of led you into this idea that there is more out there? Well, first, I guess the natural question is, like, did a lot of extreme music comes in the form of rebellion against something?
Mm-hmm.
So did you guys come up in like a religious upbringing? Were you?
Very much so.
Oh yeah.
And I think initially that was part of why I got into like metal and things, was a rebellion against that. As I get older, I care less. But like, yeah, definitely, like, for me at least, came from super religious family. And yeah, it has a weird skewing effect on you as far as like what you have a knee-jerk reaction against. Which is why, like, it took that instance. Like, I was stern atheist until I saw that.
Well, how did you come to terms with that? with the sort of like
it fucked me up.
where
It
you like
really fucked me up.
calling
at the
your
time.
parents like, I'm so sorry.
No, it wasn't like that. Because I mean, for one, they wouldn't like their religious backgrounds. They would have actually thought that you know, either like I was crazy or that was like a demon or something like that.
Right,
you know,
right.
like that. It like, I think it opened up my mind to other avenues other than what I was like brought up with, and then my reaction to it, which was, you know, to become an atheist. But it just like, I think it just brought me back in the center. You know, I was brought up on the far one way and I went far the other way.
Do you still consider yourself an atheist, or?
No. But I guess closest would maybe be agnostic, but I'm not really sure. Which I guess is the definition of agnostic. But yeah, no, I wouldn't consider myself an atheist.
Did anybody else have like a religious upbringing?
My mom's side of the family.
Oh yeah.
We would, when I was a kid, I remember leaving her aunt's house, and we'd get into the car, and I'd reach my hands in my little coat pocket, and there'd be like Jack Chick comics.
Oh yeah.
And I'd be like, what the fuck? I don't remember that.
Those are
This
awesome.
isn't mine.
Those
Yeah.
are
So
awesome.
they are awesome. You know, thinking back, I should have just kept them all. But
I always, anytime anyone's like handing out chicks, I
go to Daly City.
Immediately, I'm like, how many can you give
amazing.
me?
But
I really need to get saved. Just load me up.
But just growing up, I had a lot of, I mean, it wasn't like, you know,
Right.
but it was definitely present, and I had options. You know, I always feel like my parents raised me right, and that they weren't like, this is finite.
Right.
You know, because they both came from different religious backgrounds, and, you know, somehow that marriage made it work. And having that perspective was really interesting, and I think that was very, you know, awakening. Once I was like, you know, like, I like black metal, but I'm not going to go like burn down churches, you know. And it's like, you know, it just
Poser.
yeah. He's right. But
He is right.
yeah, just thinking about everything, thinking about ourselves in this pool. It's like everything you do that's not normal, what the norm is rebellion. I think, you know, the greatest expression comes from rebellion usually, just going against the norm, deviating. So, but I you know, I never had an agenda against one or the
Right,
other. I
right.
just think it's kind of silly sometimes. You know, I like stories. Stories are good. Stories are good. You can't deny that. You know, good values are good. You know, but there are lines to where, you know, when you're controlling populations, or, you know, telling people, you know, this, it's a little frustrating, because there's so much out there, you know, through time, and it's like, okay, well, again, just a drop in the pool.
Anybody else with some religion in their past? I only ask this because they're, you know, black metal has a history of being, you know, anti, in most cases, Christianity, but really in an effort to sort of regain a lost culture in a way. A lot of the sort of pagan areas that, you know, had a very deep spiritual religion that connected them to the earth and the spiritual realm and all these things that, we're kind of, playing around with in this conversation, that there's this sort of drive to get back to that, and seeing Christianity as the thing that like tore that away and imposed this false construct, and using the music and the spectacle around the acts that a lot of people were taking, a lot of the church burnings, the corpse paint and all this stuff, like, is meant to shake people out of that mindset and really present like a counter to that challenges it. But it's interesting to see the ways that's very overt, but I think for American culture it's a little less overt because it's not one thing being dominated on us. We have, a diverse enough culture that it's sort of an amalgamation of things being sort of dictating
Something like
to us.
Christianity is like
For sure,
pretty much the big one that's being shoved down our throats.
Yeah.
But what's different here, as opposed to say like Norway, obviously, is there's no indigenous one religion that was crushed underfoot. You're just gonna
those people aren't, a significant enough, majority or even minority to assert that past religion.
Right.
But things like Native American spiritualism and things like that did exist, previously, and that was a lot more like the pagan religions of Norway and, that sort of northern area of Europe that seems to be a hotbed for this specific type of reactionary art, in a way. It's interesting to see how things are different when coming from a different cultural perspective. We do have a dominant Christian society here, but even that Christian society is influenced so much by the diversity of everyone else that lives here and the diversity of different kinds of Christians, not just, Protestant, Catholic, or whatever. So how do you guys come to terms with the fact that you're dealing like in this sort of, somewhat spiritual realm in a way, and how that connects to, religion, in the sense that most people, when they hear about spirituality, they think of a religion. Whereas, I think everyone here can kind of agree that spirituality is something different than organized religion. Is it something that you are reacting to, this dominant, society?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us in a certain way are reacting to that. Whether we are intentionally doing it anymore or not. I know initially that was at least my motivation. Now it's just kind of become part of the landscape. But
yeah, I mean, I didn't really have to, I wasn't being forced into going to church or anything like that. Although I did live all around the Pacific Northwest and Utah, which is like Mormon and predominantly. And so, I mean, I had to deal with it, but it wasn't really anything that was, crammed down my throat or anything. So, I mean, I obviously wasn't very into Christianity, and I experimented with psychedelics and whatnot when I was younger, and maybe still do, but and yeah, I researched a lot of like Eastern mysticism and spirituality and whatnot, and just kind of came to the conclusion that everyone wants to know what's going on and try and put some kind of like context or significance to this whole reality or life or whatever you want to call it. And I mean, that's good. I don't really feel like I need to go to a church to express that, or I mean, it could just be sound or ritual or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like it's less about reacting to established religion than it is about exploring other types of spirituality. I mean, it doesn't have to be one or the other. I mean, I think there is a lot of, I don't know, maybe shared interests in terms of like paganism or just like other kind of undefined spirituality, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be like in contrast to something or in conflict to something.
I mean, getting back to, I mean, it ties in, but, you know, we have to also realize here that black metal was started by a bunch of suburban teenagers who were angry. It was basically punk, but with a different twist.
Yeah.
So they did that work, and it was effective, you know. And again, you know, we are not a black metal band. We are influenced by black metal. And I think the ideas from that influenced me from you know, that period and that genre. I mean, it's a lot more important to me than, you know, what the original message was. Like, you know, again, I mean, I don't have an agenda against anybody here. Well, but I like to think that we kind of represent maybe just the more philosophical side of you know, those deviations, and just an evolution, a continual evolution of results.
I mean, I think it's important to understand and appreciate those aspects of rebellion, but you don't have to be associated with what that actual rebellion is. It's kind of more that act or that inspiration.
Is it important for you that people take something away from your music, or do you just, you know, let it be what it is and whatever?
I don't think it has to be specific. I mean, I think that's what.
It's kind of
I think that's one of the most important.
Though.
What's that?
Expect people to, you know, get it.
Yeah.
Or everyone to get it.
I think that's part of the like, one of the best things about it, experimental music in general, is that like it can be open to interpretation.
Right.
Yeah, it's very open-ended. It can have a lot of different effects on different people.
That's the power, you know.
For sure.
It's undeniable.
Well, I think things are winding down a little bit here, so I am going to roll into some trivia, and then we will cap off this episode. We've been going for an hour and a half already, so we definitely put in our time. I want to thank you guys for coming by and taking the time on this Tuesday evening to come and chat with us about all kinds of craziness. So for this week's trivia, we're going with a metal theme. You know, the prize is going to be whoever gets all these answers correct can choose the show that they want to go to. So the first person to get all of these questions correct, email them to me at info@slimspresents.com, can choose to go to any of our metal-y shows coming up in the future. So we've got Ohm at GAM on 4/16. We've got Mono at GAM on 5/2. Mono is not really that metal, but Sometimes. They're an awesome Japanese sort of post-rock, abstract band. They're definitely an awesome band. So if you like Sutekh Hexen, I think you would probably like Mono. I don't know. It's an assertion, but,
No surprises.
But we also have Iced Earth coming up at Slim's on May 3rd. Nile, that same week on the 5th, and Shio at Slim's on the 7th as well. So you can choose any of those that you want to, and you can answer the following questions. First person to get them to me wins. Question number 1. All of these have a theme. So, first starting theme is black metal. In 1991, Euronymous of the band Mayhem opened an independent record store in Oslo that was said to be the birthplace of Norwegian black metal. What was the name of that record store? Don't say it, but think it. What's the name of the record store? I guess bonus points if you also translate it into English. Question number 2, continuing with the black metal theme. The name of this influential black metal band, in quotations, means darkness in J.R.R. Tolkien's fictional black speech language. It's an easy one, if you know anything about black metal. Number 3. The Egyptian deity Set is also known by this Hittite variation. Big clue on this show. Just telling you. Question number 4. The Temple of Set in Santa Barbara was established in 1975 as a splinter group of what SF-based religious organization? Also a pretty easy one. Question number 5. Another San Francisco-based religious organization. Once a Scottish Rite temple, the infamous People's Temple, headquarters of the cult leader Jim Jones, resided on Geary Street in San Francisco before Jones eventually fled to Guyana. What currently occupies the space of the People's Temple?
That's a good one.
All right. So get those answers to me as soon as possible. info@slimspresents.com. First person to get them all correct can choose their show. Ohm, Mono, Iced Earth, Nile, or Chiodos. So I want to thank Sutekh Hexen again for coming in. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
It's been
Thank
great
you.
talking to you about all kinds of crazy shit. You guys got any shows coming up that you want to promote? Keep in mind this will not air until April 2nd.
Planet Gilman with Thou
Cool.
from New Orleans and our
Oh,
friends
nice.
in Negative Standards and Cloud Rat. So that's April 18th.
Minus me.
Well, yeah.
He'll be in Europe.
I'll be
You're
overseas.
going on tour.
Mhm.
Why don't you tell us about your because we have millions of international listeners to this podcast. So tell us about your European tour.
I'm embarking on a solo tour, just as my name, and I'll be flying into Milan and playing Bologna, Venice, Barcelona, Berlin, Vienna, Budapest, Athens, Naples, Rome, and Milan again.
That's a badass fucking tour.
Not bad.
So,
And Andy, you got something going on in Puerto Rico?
Oh yeah, I'm doing 3 dates in Puerto Rico, early May. I can't remember the dates.
Where
or
can
the
they
city
find-
now, and one's in San Juan.
Where can they find that information?
If you look at my Facebook page, AC Way, that's probably the best place.
All right, last chance to shamelessly promote something. You guys have a new record that you're working on.
Yeah, we just finished the final mixing for a live recording, live collab with our friend Thomas. The project is Trepanderings Wichelen, and it was a live recording from the Stella Natura Festival that happened
cool.
in 2013. So we're having that released in a couple formats. So that'll be out shortly. Hopefully before we leave for tour in the end of May and June. We'll be throughout the West Coast. So that's happening. And
Do you guys have dates lined up already at venues?
we're playing, what's confirmed so far that we can actually talk about right now is the Debacle Fest in Seattle.
Cool.
So that will be 5/31. So be sure to catch that. There are a lot of good bands that will be playing.
And a new club in Portland, the Dynasty.
Okay.
That'll be June 1st.
The rest is me.
And then about
TV
2
out.
weeks later, we'll be doing the south half of California.
Nice. So a whole West Coast tour.
Yeah.
What's your website for people to go to?
SutekhHexen.org.
All right. Classy organization, that's Sutekh Hexen.
We're all about class.
So thanks again for tuning in. We'll be back again next week with a new guest. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.